Ever feel like the deck is stacked against you?
Mm,
Like no matter how hard you work, things just, keep getting tougher.
yeah, I know that feeling.
Well, you're not alone. We're diving into a Bitcoin magazine article today that really throws down the gauntlet.
Oh, this sounds juicy.
It argues that a lot of the problems we blame on capitalism,
Hmm.
they actually stem from too much government,
Really?
not too little.
That's a bold claim, gotta say.
It is. And this article does not pull any punches.
Okay, so what's this article called? I gotta check it out.
Bitcoin and the myth, that is capitalism. It's a wild ride, let me tell you.
Bitcoin and the myth? That is capitalism. Got it. All
Yeah.
right, I'm buckled up. Let's go.
So it starts with this idea, right? What if people craving alternative, like socialism, communism, maybe it's not that those systems are inherently better,
Mm-hmm.
but that we've never actually experienced true, like, free market capitalism.
Huh. So it's like we're chasing a fantasy because we haven't seen the real deal. I can see how that'd hook a reader.
Right. And to make its case, this article, you're going to love this. It dives into some deep historical examples,
Mm-hmm.
stuff they definitely don't teach you in school.
Oh. Like what? Give me a teaser.
Okay, so buckle up, right? We're talking about major societal cycles.
Okay.
The article uses this theory called the four turnings.
The four turnings.
Yeah, it's this idea that societies, they go through these predictable phases.
Okay.
Happens about every 80 years or so.
Mm-hmm.
Destruction, rebuilding, complacency, then right back to destruction.
Cyclical history. So where are we now in this whole turning thing?
You guessed it.
Yeah.
Smack dab in the tear it all down phase.
Makes sense, right? Look around. Unrest everywhere. People questioning everything, searching for something different.
Exactly. People are feeling the need for big change. But the article, it argues that we might be, like, misdiagnosing the problem.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How so?
Well, to prove its point, they pull out some pretty shocking statistics.
Okay.
We're talking death tolls under some of history's most notorious dictators.
Oh, wow. Okay, like
Mao, Stalin, Pol Pot.
brutal.
Right. And now here's the thing. We're conditioned to think of these regimes as, like, extreme examples of capitalism gone wrong.
Right, the evils of unchecked greed, all that.
Exactly. But, and this is a big but, the article points out that these regimes, they weren't capitalist at all. They were socialist, communist, built on this idea of a centrally planned economy.
So it's like flipping the script, challenging those assumptions we've always had.
Totally. And it's a stark reminder that even systems designed with good intentions, like equality, fairness,
Yeah.
they can have horrific
Yeah,
consequences.
when they go wrong, yeah. And those historical examples, they definitely went wrong.
Big time. And the article doesn't just, drop those bombshells and walk away.
Yeah.
It goes on to break down why these centrally planned economies, why they often fail.
Okay, so what's the breakdown? What's their argument?
So we've established that, yeah, these centrally planned economies, they don't exactly have a great track record,
To put it lightly, yeah.
to put it lightly.
Yeah.
But I got to imagine most people listening, they're not dictators trying to, like, control a whole country's economy.
Right.
So how do these historical examples, how do they actually connect to us today? Like, what are those underlying flaws that the article brings up in those systems that we should be aware of in our own lives?
See, that's what I think is so clever about this article, It takes these big sweeping historical events and it brings them down to earth, connects them to like everyday economics in a way that just makes sense.
Okay, like that.
Yeah, so it boils down these complex systems to a few, I guess you could say, vulnerabilities.
Okay.
And the first one is all about feedback loops. Or, well, the lack thereof,
Okay.
So in a free market, supply and demand, they act as a kind of like invisible hand, right?
Right.
When something's scarce, high demand, price goes up, signals to producers, hey, make more of this thing. Too much of something. Price drops. Producers adjust.
Right. It's self-regulating in theory.
Exactly. It's like, what's that old saying? Voting with your wallet.
Right. Exactly.
They're telling businesses what you value through your choices, right?
Yeah, makes sense.
But here's the thing. The article argues that centrally planned economies, they disrupt those natural feedback loops. When it's the government deciding, okay, we're going to produce this much of this at this price, it's like throwing a wrench in the whole system.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's like you end up with shortages of the things that people actually need.
Exactly.
And then surpluses of things that nobody wants.
Exactly. It's like trying to plan a menu for 1,000 people, but not, bothering to ask what they like to eat.
Right.
You might end up with a warehouse full of, like, beets and no chocolate cake.
Yeah, and nobody wants that.
Not a recipe for happy customers, right?
Not at all.
And that kind of leads us to the second big flaw. So the article highlights this concentration of power.
Okay.
Because giving a small group of people, even if they have the best intentions in the world, right, the power to control these massive, complex economies, that's just asking for trouble.
Right, yeah. Power corrupts.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen that, like, time and time again.
Throughout history, yeah.
But even beyond that, like, the corruption angle.
Mm-hmm.
How can any small group of people, no matter how smart they are, how can they possibly understand something as complex as a modern economy well enough to actually micromanage it?
It's impossible, right?
Yeah.
And the article really leans into that, actually. This lack of what they call localized knowledge. It's a huge part of why these systems fail. Because they ignored this essential truth that individual initiative, individual creativity, that's what drives progress, that's what drives innovation.
That's like stifling, like, the human element almost.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the third big flaw that the article dives into, killing innovation.
Right, because if everyone knows they're getting the same reward no matter what,
Exactly.
why put in the extra effort?
Think about it, right? If you knew, no matter what, if you just showed up, phoned it in, versus pouring your heart and soul into something, you get the same result.
Right.
Wouldn't that just like crush your motivation to go above and beyond?
Totally, yeah.
The article argues that when you don't reward individual effort, individual ingenuity, you essentially kill the incentive to innovate. Why take risks? Why push boundaries? Why try to come up with something better if the system guarantees you the same outcome, regardless, you know?
It's like the difference between, I don't know, like a garden that's left to, like, flourish naturally versus one that's constantly being, like, pruned and manicured to fit this, like, specific design.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, you might get, order in that second scenario, but you're losing that, like, wild, unpredictable beauty that comes from letting things just kind of grow and evolve organically.
That's a great analogy, and that's exactly what the article's saying happens to innovation in these centrally planned systems.
You get stifled.
Yeah. It gets controlled, and in the end, the potential for real transformative progress, it's lost.
So we've got these three strikes against centrally planned economies, right?
Yeah.
We got messed up feedback loops.
Yep.
The problems with, like, concentrated power and then this, like, death knell of innovation. But even with all that said, like, I gotta ask, there's still this, like, nagging question. If these systems are so flawed, why do they still appeal to people?
Yeah.
Why do they hold this allure, especially for younger generations, They haven't lived through these historical disasters firsthand.
Yeah, right. It's a really important point, and the article acknowledges that. Like, it gets it. There are very real problems out there that make these alternative systems tempting.
Exactly.
It even lists them out. The rising cost of living, housing being completely unaffordable, monopolies just running wild, this feeling that, the whole game is rigged against everyday people. These are huge issues, especially for younger generations, right? Looking at a future where those problems only seem to be getting worse.
Exactly. And it's easy to see how, like, facing all that, someone might think, okay, this whole capitalism thing, it's broken, got to try something else, anything else.
Right, got to hit the reset button.
Yeah, but that's when the article throws us another curveball.
Okay, what's the twist?
It argues that these problems, the very things that are pushing people away from capitalism, they're not, like, inherent to the system itself. They're symptoms of something else entirely.
Okay.
Government meddling.
Oh, interesting.
Messing with capitalism, distorting, like, its natural mechanisms.
So it's like saying, before you throw out the baby with the bathwater, maybe we haven't actually seen what this thing can do when it's working right.
Exactly. It's like the article is saying, hold on, before you, like, demolish the whole system, what if we never even saw it working as intended?
Right. Love that.
So, to make this point, they go through these issues one by one and connect them back to government actions.
Okay, yeah, let's walk through some examples. I'm with you.
Okay, perfect. So take the rising cost of living, right?
Yeah, huge one.
The article points a finger right at the Federal Reserve, specifically that whole addiction to printing money.
Right. Can't forget about that.
Remember that statistic? 40%.
Oh, yeah, crazy.
40% of all U.S. dollars ever were created in just 18 months.
Wild.
And they're like, That's not some natural market fluctuation, guys.
Right.
That is deliberate policy,
Yeah.
and it is having massive consequences for anyone holding dollars.
Yeah. If you're trying to solve a drought by, like, dumping buckets of salt water on your crops,
Right.
you're not really fixing the problem, are you? You're making it worse.
Exactly. And speaking of things that feel rigged, monopolies.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's like the classic example of capitalism gone wild, right?
Sure.
So how does the article deal with that one?
So the article makes a really key distinction here.
Okay.
It says that true monopolies, the kind that, like, crush competition and leave consumers with no options,
Right, right.
they almost never happen naturally in a truly free market.
Okay.
Think about it. If you've got a level playing field, someone's always going to try to undercut the competition.
Right, offer a better product, better price,
Yes, exactly. The article argues that the monopolies we see today, they're often the result of, well, you guessed it,
Government intervention.
government intervention. Things like, lobbying, regulatory capture, good old-fashioned cronyism.
It's always cronyism, isn't it?
Right, and all that, it protects the big guys, makes it almost impossible for anyone new to even get a foothold.
So it's not capitalism that's creating these, like, unstoppable corporate giants.
Right.
It's the very systems that are supposed to be keeping them in check.
Exactly. And the article argues that instead of protecting us, regular people, from corporate overreach, these systems, they end up protecting corporations from us, from the power of the market to actually do its thing.
Huh.
And then on top of that, you've got this whole other issue that the article calls out, malinvestment.
Malinvestment? I'm not familiar. What's that?
So the article argues that by propping up these, what they call zombie companies,
Call me companies. Okay.
businesses that can't actually support themselves, with easy money bailouts,
Right.
you end up creating this environment that's just, like, systemically unstable.
Okay.
And when you've got, like, nearly 20% of companies essentially on life support, that warps the whole playing field.
Like building a house on a foundation of sand.
Exact.
Might look fine for a little while, but eventually the whole thing's going down.
Exactly. And that's where, I'm sure you know what's coming,
You get me?
Bitcoin enters the picture.
Of course. All right, so does Bitcoin swoop in and save the day?
Well, the article, it doesn't present Bitcoin as, like, a magic bullet,
Right.
but as a crucial tool that could help address some of these, like, systemic issues that we've been talking about. It argues that those key features of Bitcoin, the things that make it so different from, traditional money, those could be the keys to unlocking a truer, more authentic form of free market capitalism.
Okay, I'm listening. But, hit me with the, like, Bitcoin buzzwords, but make them relevant.
Okay, deal. So, fixed supply. Only 21 million Bitcoins will ever exist. That's it.
Right.
No printing presses, no central bank, like, messing with the value. And the article argues that this built-in scarcity, this is what makes Bitcoin so fundamentally different from, government-issued money. Because you can't just inflate it away, right? Which means it has the potential to, like, hold its value in a way that the dollar, honestly, just can't.
Okay, yeah. I see the appeal, for
Yeah.
sure. Especially, like, these days. What about those other, like, Bitcoin buzzwords? Permissionless, decentralized. What do those even mean in the real world?
Those are important. They get to, like, the core of what makes Bitcoin revolutionary. Permissionless, no one can stop you from using it, owning it, or making transactions with it. Like, no bank can deny you service.
Right.
No government can just freeze your assets. It's a truly open financial network. And because it's decentralized, meaning there's no single point of control,
Right.
it is really, really hard to censor or manipulate.
So it's like taking power back from the people at the top, the gatekeepers, and putting control back in the hands of individuals.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, I can see why people like that idea. But the article doesn't stop there, does it?
No, it doesn't.
It hints at a future where blockchain, the technology behind Bitcoin, could change way more than just money.
Exactly. Like, imagine a government where every record, every decision, every dollar spent is recorded on a public blockchain that anyone can see.
Wow.
Totally transparent, can't be tampered with, completely accountable. Or businesses, right? They could be structured as DAOs,
DAOs.
decentralized autonomous organizations. Decision-making power, it's distributed among everyone involved, the stakeholders, not just concentrated at the top.
That's a pretty wild vision of the future.
It is a wild vision, for sure.
Yeah.
One where power is more evenly distributed, systems are more transparent, individuals have more control over their own lives.
A lot to process.
It really is.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this whole deep dive so fascinating. Like, if Bitcoin does succeed, separating money and state,
Yeah.
building these more transparent, accountable systems,
Mhm.
what happens to government?
Yeah, what does happen to government?
Right. Does it like evolve into something totally new, something more directly accountable to citizens?
Yeah.
Or does it just fade away,
Yeah.
become irrelevant? These are big questions.
Huge. And honestly, I don't know the answers. But I think they're questions that we all need to be thinking about as we navigate this, like this totally new, uncharted territory.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for, right?
Exactly. To ask the tough questions, explain the possibilities. And we want to hear from you. Head over to our social media, use hashtag #DeepDiveFuture. Tell us what you think. What does a decentralized future look like to you? What excites you? What scares you? Until next time, deep divers, keep asking those tough questions.